I want you all to know that there is a live stream that will happen for J.J. Carrell. We're going to start this meeting off the way we start every meeting, in prayer. My name is Maria Holiday, and I am the chair for the Johnson County Republican Party. If you would stand, we're going to have Rabbi Shmuel, who has given us this space this evening, lead us in prayer. And if you remain standing, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance following.
And I just wanted you to know it gives me particular joy to welcome you, because in the history of Israel, there has been no greater refuge since 135, when we were exiled from our land, than the United States. The United States has been a refuge until today, and we don't know what the future holds, but we must stand. And to quote somebody, we need to fight, fight, fight. You agree with that? So, Avinu Sheva Shamayim, our Father in heaven, we come before you and thank you that the Messiah has shed his blood that we can be free, and as free people we can walk in truth, in righteousness, in holiness. And we pray you'll bless the speakers tonight as they are explaining to us a little bit more about the depredations and the travesty that's coming upon our country, and help us to stand for you and stand for righteousness. In the name of the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Flags here. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce you to Kayla Klein, who is going to sing the national anthem for us. You may be seated.
One moment, let me get my starting pitch. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Absolutely beautiful. And of course, I knew better than to say you could be seated, but somebody motioned to me and I wasn't thinking. There'll be other things that I will do wrong. Humanness. I do want to thank all the people that are here this evening, and I want to do a special thank you to Liberty Lions, who has partnered with us in this event. We had J.J. Carrell as a speaker in April for our Elephant Club, which if you don't work during the day and you can take a long lunch, is great. But he was so good, we knew we needed to have him back again. We were able to have J.J. Carrell in the beginning because of a connection that we made with Daniel McGurr. If you don't know Daniel, he has a podcast called The Daily 302. There are a lot of people who have been involved with issues in politics and looking at government for a long time. And then there are those people that 2020 opened their eyes. And Daniel started really delving into things at that time and seeking truth and doing a lot of research. And if you're not familiar with the Daily 302, he's going to have some cards out back that you can pick up so that you can also go. And if you feel really educated, then you can share it with somebody else. But we're very grateful to you for your connections. The people that you have on your podcast are extraordinary. So that we could have J.J. Carrell, we're grateful. I'm going to let him introduce our speaker, but the first thing I want to ask beforehand is there any press in the room? Good. That means the only press that was here I've asked to leave. This is a private event on private property. However, they did say that they would be back, so be advised that anything you say to press can and will be used against you. With that in mind, Daniel, would you come up here and introduce our speaker, please?
Thank you, Maria. I want to echo what Maria said. I want to say thank you to all of you that came out tonight. You are definitely in for a treat. It's not going to be a warm and fuzzy talk. If that's what you're looking for, you want to exit it. So, just a little bit on our podcast. I believe in, obviously, divine appointments, and having JJ here is definitely one of those things. So when you have a podcast, I mean, that's pretty much the news now, right? So if you're not watching a podcast, you need to. You start with mine. But when you have a podcast, it's very, very difficult, especially when you have a national podcast, and JJ, echoed this more, is trying to get guests on a show is extremely difficult. Like, I will hound somebody's Twitter page, their Facebook page, their emails until they tell me no. And a lot of times it takes 2 months, 3 months, and sometimes it takes, if you have larger national guests, it takes even longer. I was sitting at home September of last year, I think it was September, October. And
really close for some reason.
So Real America's Voice has a guy named Grant Stinchfield that's on every night. I think it's 6 he's on. And I began making the shift with my show from going to a lot of different things, focusing on the country, but to the border crisis. So I'm sitting at home one night, and I'm watching Stinchfield, and JJ pops up on the screen. Didn't know him at the time, never heard of him. And I'm sitting there, my wife's over here on her phone, because this is what I do at 6 o'clock at night. Let's watch news. And I'm listening to him, and all of a sudden it pops up that says Kansas City, Kansas. And I look at my wife and I'm like, this guy's in Kansas? I gotta go find this guy. So the next day I found him on Twitter, and I went on to one of his posts and I put a comment on there. And I said, hey dude, we need to connect, I need to have you on my podcast. It was like the same night or the next morning, he's already messaging me and we already scheduled it. He was like the easiest guy to get. Like everybody I've ever had to get on my show, he was the easiest. Because that was a divine appointment, right? And then come to find out that he had moved here to Johnson County, Kansas after retiring from the Border Patrol for 24 years. And we met, and we become really good friends. And the stuff that you're going to hear tonight may be kind of scary. A lot of people don't know about exactly what's going on with the border, but there are no longer any border states. That's non-existent. So pay attention to what he has to say tonight. But the thing that I really want you to listen to, and after you leave here, is to go on to whatistreason.com and pre-order his documentary, because that's going to be one of the most important documentaries of your lifetime. And you'll need to share that with everybody in your life. So without further ado, JJ, go on up, buddy.
Good evening. thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to come speak to anyone that wants to hear about this. And as Daniel said, I wish I was coming and we were going to talk about how great the border is and that Donald Trump was still the president. And we had the most secure border in the history of the United States border under him, and talk about how we're going to fix legal immigration and on and on. But we're not having that discussion tonight. The United States of America is under attack. We all know it, and we all can feel it. After 24 years in the United States Border Patrol, my last year in the Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year in his 4-year term. I spent a year after I retired researching and writing a book. And then for the last 4 months, I have been traveling across America filming my first documentary, which, you talk about a hand of God, I've not had one obstacle filming this. Unbelievable. Making every flight, having the money to do it, meeting people I didn't even know existed. After all of that time, I can stand before you today with absolute, complete confidence and say the enemy of the United States of America is our federal government. And I'm going to prove it to you in the next 30 minutes. The day of Joe Biden's first day of inauguration is an important day to remember, because prior to that, they had meetings at the highest level of government, and they made a determination and a decision. We are going to use illegal immigration, the vehicle, the weapon of illegal immigration, to fundamentally transform the United States of America. How do I know that? Was I in those meetings? Did I interview someone that was in those meetings? No. But I was on the border, and I saw the very first day that he signed 94 executive orders destroying and obliterating every immigration policy Donald Trump had in effect. 94 his first day. He doesn't know what planet Earth, if he's on planet Earth or not, but he signed 94 executive orders. He will sign in his first year 296 executive orders, all on immigration, laying the foundation of what we're witnessing today. When you look at what he has done in 4 years, it is intentional, it is strategic, and it is purposeful. This is not by happenstance. Let me just give you some data before we get started so you understand where I'm coming from. At the end of 4 years, he will have arrested and released over 12 million people into the United States of America. Anytime, right now as we're standing here talking, 1,600 miles of the 2,000-mile border does not have one single Border Patrol agent working. Not one. Never been done in the history of the United States Border Patrol. In those 4 years, he will have arrested, these 12 million will be 60 to 70% single adult military age men from the continent of Africa and the Middle East. In those 12 million, you'll have over 1 million Venezuelans, you'll have almost 1 million Haitians, you'll have 200,000 Chinese nationals, with at least half of them are PLA soldiers already identified by our military. You'll have 250,000 Russians. You will have 500,000 unaccompanied alien children from the ages of infants to 17 years old will be arrested and then released into America, and they are lost. Health and Human Services and Office of Refugee Resettlement, think of a gigantic national CPS, Child Protective Services, has lost them all. They have no idea, and we'll talk about that later. And there will be over 250,000 special interest aliens will be arrested and released at the end of his term. And what are special interest aliens? In layman's terms, those are terrorists. Release them all. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, in my career as a journeyman agent down on the Tijuana border, running ATV units, going up the coast and running a very large task force, and then ending my career as a senior leader in the United States Border Patrol, I directly or indirectly running stations and task force and saw my fellow partners make at least 100,000 arrests, minimum 100,000. Do you know how many special interest aliens that I saw in 24 years? 5. You know how many I released? 0, because I would be fired if I did that. Fast forward now, it's 250,000 and they're all gone. That's what we know about. Every statistic that I just told you within those 12 millions, I want you to double, triple, or quadruple. And that's the real number. We all believe in the business that under this administration, we have allowed 15 to 18 million more people have crossed the border undetected, absconded. The number within Congress, and they all admit to it, the number is closer to 30 million. 30 million people have crossed the border and absconded. Prior to Joe Biden taking office, it was accepted through an MIT Yale study that 22 million illegal aliens were living in America. Fast forward today, in the halls of Congress, they don't even debate it. They say it openly. There's 45 million illegal aliens living in America, and I believe that number would be closer to 50 million by the time Joe Biden leaves in January, God willing. 50 million, what is that? That's 1 in 6 Americans. 1 in 6 residents living in America are illegal alien. You cannot sustain this type of demographic shift. We are going from a demographic shift from citizens to non-citizens. This has nothing to do with race and ethnicity. Why? Because there's 195 nations on planet Earth, and 180 of them are in the rest data of the United States Border Patrol, meaning the whole world is here. The whole world. Now, what's the best way for me to articulate what's going on? The best way I can do it is tell you about these last 4 months that I spent traveling around America with my partner Ryan Matta and his production team. I knew before I left and got on the plane to fly to California, I knew exactly what my documentary was going to be. I am very black and white, I am very determined, and I am very regimented, and dang it, I knew exactly what my documentary was going to be. I had it all down. Flew into San Diego about 12 midnight. Ryan is flying in from Michigan. We meet up, we get in the car, and we head straight down to the border, right where I used to work in Imperial Beach, the southwesternmost corner of the United States of America. Most violent time in recent Border Patrol history, that's where I was. Fighting day and night. Day and night. Every time I went to work, I knew I was going to get assaulted. Broken bones, blood spilled, shootings, everything you can imagine, every single day on the border. The border is a desolate, horrible, disgusting place that is hopeless. And I know it says a lot about me, and it says a lot negative about me, but I thrived in that environment. I think God built me to lead men, and He built me to be physical and violent when I needed to be in order to keep America safe. And I did things in the dark of night that I will never apologize for, because I know the vast majority of Americans could never do what I did in my buddies, men and women in the United States Border Patrol that do every day now. I flew into San Diego, I got in my vehicle, I got in, my buddy, who's a supervisor, got me into the station. I know everybody, we get on the road and we start driving down Trump's wall. And everything that I thought I knew changed like that. Because what I saw, which I knew I saw on videos, and I talked to all my friends, they sent me videos secretly, there were hundreds of people living on our side of the border, meaning they crossed the border fence and they squatted and they started fires and they're living there, and NGOs are bringing them food. If I continued down this 6 miles of Imperial Beach and I went all the way to, say, Arizona, I would have passed thousands of people today living on the border, thousands. Why? Because there's not enough Border Patrol agents to go arrest them and bring them to the station. So they stage in that area. I went to bed that morning. I got in about 7 in the morning, me and my partner. I laid my head on the pillow, and before I did, I knew everything that I thought I was going to do, everything that I was going to document and tell America, it changed. It changed completely. Later that day, I'm interviewing nonstop. Ryan and I would go to each place in America, and we would go 72 hours nonstop. One of the guys that I interviewed, DHS employee, I interviewed Border Patrol agents, ICE agents, FBI agents, all the way down the line. None of those people would talk to me on the record, in front of a camera. It was all blurred. Why? Because every single department is scared to death of the federal government. And that should tell you everything you need to know about our federal government, that their own law enforcement are scared to death to talk. One of the people I talked to, he was the man that pushed the electronic fund transfer button to the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. And I said to him, tell me
who you were in charge of, what NGO, and tell me how much money it was. Give me an idea of what I'm looking at. He said, okay, I was in charge of Jewish Family Services. But there's Catholic Charities, which I'm a Catholic, and it disgusts me. There's Lutheran Family Services, the United Way, and there's a multitude of others. But the majority of the NGOs are all under the blanket of religion. They cloak themselves in God and they lie to you. And I asked him, you're in charge of Jewish Family Services, tell me, what's the largest check you cut? He said, well, the largest check I cut was $600 million. And I said, well, okay, well, is that for like another year or two? And he literally looked at me, because he's someone I know, and he gave me the look of like, JJ, get in the ball game. Get in the game. That's for 2 months. And then I asked him, okay, but you're in a room. You're in a big office with cubicles, right? Yes. Who's cutting the checks to Catholic Charities and Lutheran Family Services, and on and on and on? He says, well, everyone else is doing that. So we're cutting checks for $600 million every 2-3 months? Yes. And then he said to me, what you don't understand is underneath Jewish Family Services, underneath Catholic Charities, underneath all of them are 50 or 100 subcontractors. And they come out of the woodwork and say, I need $10 million for diapers, I need $5 million for COVID tests. And he said, I'm writing checks as fast as I can because the federal government told me write every check they ask for and give it to them because there's chaos on the border. And what was interesting, he said, as I wrote those checks and I hit that button for electronic fund transfer, do you know where the money went? He said, it didn't go to subcontractor X, it went to Jewish Family Services. They're laundering money up in the name of God and religion. And we are using those NGOs to fund our demise. I knew when I flew home after talking to all of my former colleagues and talking to people I never met before and had to digitize their voice. This was a common theme throughout my 4 months. I got on a plane late at night, fly back to Kansas City, and as I'm flying, forgive me for my words, 2 things popped in my head as I sat there, and this, every time I flew, I thought, what in the hell did I just hear and see? And the second thing was, how in the hell am I going to articulate this to America? And that was the beginning. For I knew that everything that I was going to do had changed. There was my documentary in my brain that I was going to do. I threw it away, and I knew instinctively that everything that I knew had changed, and that there was a world out there that I had not experienced yet or have the knowledge. And I thought to myself, if 24 years, a year writing the book, studying, talking about this, and I'm shocked, what is America going to think about this? I went to Chicago as my next stop, and then New York City, the East Coast. Why did I go there? It's 2,000, 3,000 miles away from the border. They're not affected by this. But as Daniel said, there are no more border states. All of America is a border. I went to New York and I went to Chicago, and what I saw was shocking. Shocking. I saw crime skyrocket. I saw gangs trying to machete each other to death. I saw Americans pushed aside in tents, living in homeless encampments as we spent millions of dollars renovating hotels and buildings to house illegal aliens. Let me give you 2 examples of Chicago. You come off of Chicago ramp, and there's this gigantic homeless encampment of dilapidated tents. The majority of those people are on drugs, homelessness, veterans, and I go in there with my guide. Let's go in there and look. Let's talk. So I walk in with a suit because I have to go do an interview with a politician. I come out of there reeking of urine and feces. Our citizens, our brothers and sisters that are hard on the luck are living in squalor. Why is this important besides the fact that we need to help our brothers and sisters? A quarter of a mile away, walking distance, I can see the building. I can see the building they just renovated for about $20, $30 million, and is housing 1,200 single adult military age men from Venezuela, all of them free housing, 3 meals a day, same day laundry service, cable TV, and they get a brand new iPhone and we pay for it all. And you, the American citizen, give them money, cash money every month so they have spending money. And our brothers and sisters are living in squalor. 200 yards away that I can see from the street, I want you to think of giant white wedding tents like you see in movies and stuff, beautiful, gleaming. Signs, free clothes, free food, medicine. This is the transit center where every illegal alien comes from the border, flies in or buses in, goes to the transit center. They get fed, clothed, get a chit where they're going to go live for free. And here's the beauty. On the street, they have 5 city buses, brand new, gleaming. And those are called warming buses. And then in the summer, they're called cooling buses. So if you've ever been in Chicago in the winter, it's brutal. The wind chill, it's the windy city. I'm talking to a gentleman, and he tells me, do you know what they did to us this winter? I said, I don't know, tell me. He says, we're living in these tents, and it's raining, and all of me and my buddies, our fingers and our toes start to get frostbite. He says, we wrap ourselves in blankets, and we walk 200 yards to the buses, and we knock on the door. And as we're knocking, we can look up there and see all of the migrants. And they're all in new clothes, and they're eating their freshly cooked food. And we're banging on the door. Let me in, let me in. We're freezing. And the guy says, no, it's only for migrants. Only for migrants. That's just a little bit of Chicago. I went down into the inner city. It's a war zone. That is not America. I don't know what you call that, but it's not America. Every building's dilapidated. Every building should be shuttered. The people are homeless. They have no jobs. You can say whatever you want to say about those people. Those people, the lowest income people in our society. And I interviewed all of them. I interviewed street pastors, mega church pastors. I interviewed gang members that created the Black Disciples and murdered so many people. I talked to gang members that just got out of prison for 21 years for murder and another one for 26. I interviewed soup kitchen chefs and people that work with the homeless, and they all told me the same thing. We're being replaced by the Venezuelans that they're bringing in here illegally. They're attaching $9,000 to them every month for rent assistance, and they're moving us out, and we're going to go to war. War. You will have a race riot in Chicago by the end of the summer. I'll guarantee it. And so does everyone I spoke to, guarantees it. And they asked me, a higher ranking GOP, and there's not a lot of GOP men down there, right? Politicians. And he said to me, JJ, do you know how many black residents there are in Chicago? And I said, I apologize, I don't. I think there's probably 1 million and a quarter. He says, no, it used to be. They are all leaving. There's 700,000 of us left. And he said 2 weeks ago, our mayor, Mayor Johnson, made a proclamation and said, we are ready to bring in 700,000 illegal aliens into Chicago. And he said, do you think that is coincidental? And I said, no, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything has a reason and a purpose. He says, yes, they're replacing us because we are not voting for them, and they need new voters. I went to New York City. 50% of all New York City hotels are contracted for illegal aliens. So make sure Fox News tells you lies. I listen to them, and I cannot believe their data. I'm telling you right now, 50% of the hotels in New York City are there for illegal aliens. New York City in 2023 will run a $3 billion deficit. In 2024, it looks like $4 to $5 to $6 billion deficit. Chicago's already spent $3.5 billion on illegal aliens and ignored their own people. New York City's crime is so skyrocketing. It's incredible. My partner, Ryan Matta, looks totally different than me. I look like a police officer or law enforcement. He's a little shorter. He's got tats all over. Think of a guy that does documentaries and podcasts and everything. That's that guy. And he wouldn't let me. I can't go down into the inner cities and stuff unless I'm brought down there with someone, or if he's going to go look at brothels or he's going to look at drug dens. I can't go. He has to go, and he brings all his gadgets there. He's down in New York City. Prostitution is legal. It's not legal, but it's legal. It's in your face. He goes down there and he sends me pictures, says, okay, you can come down here now. Everybody will run away, but let's go down here. I'm going to show you. All of them are illegal aliens. He could not go into some rooms because the women looked so young that he was scared to death to be alone with a minor and have someone bust in the door and him trying to explain what he's doing. That's what's happening in your country. You say, well, that's New York City and Chicago. You have Whitewater, Wisconsin, an hour and a half from Chicago, 15,000 people there. They have less than, over 10% of their population now are illegal aliens from Venezuela and Nicaragua. I talked to the chief of police and he says they see crimes they have never seen in their whole life. Kidnapping, murder, rape, child rape, prostitution, drugs, name it. They never had it, now they have it. You look in Ohio, Springfield, Ohio. I didn't even know there was a Springfield, Ohio. Springfield, Ohio has 58,000 residents. Their whole city is being destroyed because now they house 20,000 illegal Haitians. If you don't know anything about Haiti, Haiti is a war-torn country, and their two instruments of war are machete attacks and rape. There's 20,000, and I will guarantee you within 6 months to a year, there'll be another 20,000. And then those residents will be leaving in droves, and you'll have a major city in Ohio that will just be all illegal aliens. All of them. Cincinnati is now having Mauritanians. I didn't even know this existed. Mauritanians, a big country in Africa, but their real name is the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. They just started allowing young schoolgirls to go to school. Just started. Now there's a pipeline from Mauritania to Cincinnati, and they have thousands of these men inside their city right now. How do you think that's going to play out in America? I went to Philadelphia. Why would I go to Philadelphia? A lot of people ask that. Well, I went there because I wanted to document the drugs that are pouring into America. And what better place than to go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, over 2,000 miles away, where 95% of all hard narcotics come from the Sinaloa drug cartel into Philly. More particularly, I went to Kensington Park neighborhood. Think of a 1 square mile. They like to say it's a block, but it's really a square mile. And I want you to think about the TV show Walking Dead or some horror film. And I want you to think of not tens, not hundreds. I want you to think of thousands of young men and women that look like zombies, literal zombies, hunched over like this, and they shuffle, or they just stand like this for hours. And then when they wake up from their stupor, they can't bend back, get stretched back up. So everyone looks like in their 20s, looks like they're 100. And now they're putting fentanyl in the drugs. And now they put a thing called trank in the drugs. And what happens is your blood goes down to your lower extremities, arms and legs, and your veins cannot bring it back up, your blood. So your blood pools in your arms and your legs. I want you to think of people you've seen that have like elephantitis, where their legs get like this. And then the skin splits. And then it turns into a flesh-eating disease. And then they amputate their arms and legs. Thousands of this. I'm walking down the street of Kensington, not feeling safe at all. Don't have my gun and my badge, just me, ready to go to fight and war. And you know what struck me more than anything walking down there? Is I'm walking down and I'm seeing what I believe to be levels of hell. This is how you live hell. They can't see, they don't have veins anymore, they get destroyed, so they have to shoot each other in the neck because you can't see your vein, right? So they take turns shooting each other to the neck and the chest. And I'm walking because it's a drug-free zone, meaning drug enforcement-free zone. No, you're allowed to buy and sell and take all the drugs you want there. You know what I thought? We sent $200 billion to Ukraine, and we didn't spend a nickel on our American brothers and sisters. How is that possible? We sent $4 trillion to the Middle East. to fight wars. And we don't build anything for us. Nothing. And you have to ask the question, why? Then I went to Texas. We just kind of hopscotched around. There was a purpose to it, but I knew when I went to Texas, I knew instinctively, because I knew the guy I needed to meet, and I knew that everything that I thought about my documentary was going to change, and I knew my life was going to change, because I knew that I was going to have to physically see the manifestation of evil. I'm going to see it. And what did I go to Texas for? I went there to meet a man named Carlos Arellano. And I had him drive me around and show me all the child detention facilities in the United States of America, in Texas. And we went from small ones that hold tens to some that hold 100, and then others that hold thousands of unaccompanied alien children, from babies, newborn babies, to 17 years old. And we sat there and drove and drove and drove in Texas. And I interviewed him for hours and hours and hours. And why is he so important? Because he worked for 8 years inside of all of those child detention facilities. And he traveled all over America trafficking these children. Over 100 facilities are in Texas alone. There are 400 child detention facilities across the United States of America. The federal government has built a superhighway in order to distribute children into America. And I asked him, I need you to tell me, explain to me, what is going on in those NGOs? And he said to me, there are horrible things going on in there, and I don't want to talk about it. So I pressed him and said, I need you to talk about it. He said, I'm going to tell you one time, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. I said, okay. He says they're raping and sexually abusing children inside those facilities. 2 weeks ago, Ken Paxton of Texas did a lawsuit against Southwest Keys. I want you to think of the world's largest Walmart you've ever seen in your life, with 2,000 kids jammed in there. There's lawsuits against them for raping children in there over and over and over again for years. Same thing with Catholic Charities. He took me from Southwest Keys, he took me to Carrizo Springs. I want you to think of Texas. Have you ever been to Texas? I want you to think of scrub brush, desert. Off a nondescript gravel road, he takes me. I would have driven by it 1,000 times. He takes me a half a mile into this desert, and there is one of the biggest FEMA camps you've ever seen, called Carrizo Springs. It has a gas station and a stop sign. There are 2,000 children jammed in those FEMA camps. Then I asked him, Carlos, talk to me and convince me that there's child sex trafficking going on. I need you to give me stories. I want to know. And he tells me, I want to tell you, he told me hundreds of stories over hours, but 2 stuck out to me. He said, first, I am a high school dropout with a GED. And I said, okay, are there other people there that are credentialed, educationally credentialed, nurses, social workers? No. I said, well, there's hundreds of you just in this area. There's thousands across America, but hundreds here. Where do you get them? He says, well, we go down to McAllen, that has an annual income of $11,000 annual income. And we go to day labor sites and employment centers, and we hire everyone we can. Then we give them 1 day of training, and then they take kids all across America. And when their planes get delayed, they sleep in hotels with young girls. They haven't been vetted. This is going on every day. I said, tell me a story. And I said, don't tell me a story that's shocking, that's a one-off. Tell me something that happens all the time. Okay. He goes, I'm a single man. I'm now making $7,000 a week. I'm working so much. $7,000 a week, GEDs, making over $30,000 a month. He says, I came to work and they told me, Carlos, you have to take this little baby girl, 3 months old, and you need to take her from McAllen, Texas to New York. Okay. I said, well, hold on a second. This is how my interview went with him the whole time. Hold on. I just kept going. Hold on a second. I got to ask you a couple questions. Okay, Carlos, you ever had you're a dad? No. Have you ever held a baby? No. Do you have any children in your family? Yeah, but they're like distance, and I don't deal with kids. I said, so who taught you how to make formula? He goes, they didn't give me any formula. I said, okay, well, what was in your diaper bag? He's like, they didn't give me a diaper bag. I said, you took a baby that needs to be fed 5, 6 times, maybe 7 times in 18 hours, and it's going to change her diaper minimum half a dozen times? You took that child just in your arms and did it to New York? He goes, yeah, 18 hours. She never stopped crying. She sat in her urine and feces for 18 hours. I didn't feed her. And said, what? I just asked you to tell me stories that are not one-offs. He goes, no, that's not a one-off. This happens all the time. And then I said to him, I need you to tell me about trafficking. Tell me that convince me that you're not just taking people to family. He goes, okay. Every couple days, every couple weeks, we would get an all-hands meeting. Everyone's got to show up like 10 o'clock at night, okay? Well, then we would get 200 to 300 children, put them in vans and buses, and we would drive from Carrizo Springs and Pecos all the way down to El Paso, Texas, back to the border. Hours. And then in El Paso, there would be 3 Lear jets, private, sitting on a runway, and we would drive up and we would push all 200 to 300 on these jets that are sitting on private airstrip, and we were forbidden to talk to the pilots or the flight attendants, and they were forbidden to talk to us. And then we would fly in the middle of the night in silence, and then we would land in the middle of the night across America, and then waiting on another tarmac that was a private tarmac, there would be buses and vans waiting for us, and we would jam all the kids in there, and we would drive them in the middle of the night and get to their final destination in the morning. And then I would turn over black children to white families, white children to black families, Hispanics to Asians, and Asians to blacks. He says, because I was delivering a product. I was delivering a child. There was no, I love you, I'm so glad to see you. This was a transaction. I flew to Washington, D.C. because I needed more evidence. I interviewed a woman named Deborah White, and maybe you've heard of her. She went in front of Congress for Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley and testified. I interviewed her for 2.5 hours prior to that. Then I went to Colorado, and I spoke to a man named Basil, and he runs one of the biggest, largest child trafficking hunting groups. I call them hunters. And he goes and he finds young kids and he rescues them. But everyone in his organization is tier 1 operators, meaning they had to be former CIA, special forces and military, and on and on and on. FBI, everybody, because they want to tap into all of their databases and all their contacts in order to find kids. And I talked to Basil, and I said, I need you to convince me. I want you to tell me first, what is it like going after children? He says, well, you have to understand it's 2 different ways. There's the dirty, dirty way, and then there's the highly sophisticated way. And I said, okay, I don't really want to go to the dirty way, but I need to because I need to document this. I need to tell you. I take no joy in telling you this today. None, but you need to understand what's going on in your country. He says the dirty way is the kidnapping kids because I can't tell you if they're illegal or U.S. citizens because they don't speak English and I have no idea. But he sees the increase of child trafficking going on in America. He says, I go down in the basements, and there the kids are, tied up, chains or ropes. They've been raped repeatedly for months on end, toddlers to teenagers. All of their bodies, as you can imagine, all of their orifices are torn up and shredded. They're festering with disease, STDs, and then I rescue them. And then he said the clean way. The clean way is these major organizations that dabble in pedophilia will send out a menu in a encrypted message across the globe. And then they will get a hanger on a runway, and then they will broadcast an auction. They strip the kids naked and stand them on something high as this, and then the bidding starts. And when the bidding ends, they put the clothes back on the child and they fly them all across the world. He says this is going on every single day in America. And here's the most important thing that I want you to understand. I interviewed FBI agents that do this job every day. I interviewed whistleblower from HHS that got fired. DHS component where he decided he's a military analyst and he figured out the drug cartels, figured out a loophole within DHS to where they can cross a border and they can be sponsors and take these children. And the government did nothing to stop it. Nothing. Congressional testimony by Josh Hawley, Johnson, Grassley, all of them got HHS director Javier Becerra and Ms. Marcos, whose Office of Refugee Resettlement, to admit under oath that they lost the first 85,000 children, lost them. They have no idea. I asked every one of my people I interviewed, how many of the 500,000 are lost? Give me a percentage. And all of them said the low end, 85%, mostly almost 90 plus, meaning all of them are gone. Our government has no idea where they are. There's no follow-up. But then I ask all of them a very, very important question. And I have it on, I tell my partner, you need to catch this every time because I want to see what their reaction is. And I said, all I want is a yes or no. That's all I want. Here's the statement. The United States government is the largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. And every single one of these high-level operators, inside and out, you know what they told me? They didn't whisper. They said, yes, yes, yes. And they all said, you better tell everyone in America that the world's largest child sex trafficking organization is your own federal government. Baz told me, because in my job, as the sheriff will know, when you interview people that are dirty, they're criminals, and you interview your law enforcement guys that make the arrest, everyone has a different perception of what's going on in the crime. So Basil tells me, well, I'll tell you a story, JJ. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear this. I believe what Carlos says, but no one I interview knows that I've interviewed other people. I wall everybody off. And he says, well, one day, I got intel that there was going to be private jets flying into Chattanooga, Tennessee. Remember, there's no border states anymore. And he says, there are going to be 2 Lear jets, unmarked, carrying 60 to 100 children. We called local PD. They said, yeah, we'll take care of it. We didn't trust them. So then we went and we surveilled it. And sure enough, at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 Lear jets land in dark of night, and all of a sudden there's buses and vans, and they push out 60 to 100 kids into these vans. They disappear at night, and we have never found them since. Why is your federal government flying children throughout our nation in the dark of night? Explain it to me. Explain what the hell is going on. Your federal government has weaponized illegal immigration and has brought in 30 million people on top of the 22 million, and they have 1 in 6 residents of the United States of America is an illegal alien. 60 to 70% of all illegal aliens are single adult military-age men from places that despise you, hate women, and hate Christianity. Hate it. We live in a world of beta males. We do. We are physically soft, we're emotionally weak, we're spiritually weak, we're not tied to anything. And how do I know that? I can see it with my eyes, but I also know that I'm looking at criminal data reports every single day of men, women, and children being raped and killed in America by illegal aliens, and American men do nothing. I lay everything at the feet of the American man. God instilled in us the absolute desire to protect our wives and children. And we have failed. We have failed. We have allowed our churches to take our children and lie to us. We've allowed NGOs under the blanket of God to traffic children. We've allowed them to tell us that men can have babies and LGBTQ is great and we can mutilate our children. It's all good. We are the #1 consumer of child pornography in the United States of America. We are in the top tier nations in the world that pays for child sex. We have Jeffrey Epstein with everyone in between. We have P. Diddy. Connect the dots. And I have found, and I believe this in the depth of my soul, after speaking to people that are in the business, that pedophilia runs, a thread of pedophilia runs through every segment of our society at the highest levels. And they all agree, yes. And then I push one more point. And I said, General Flynn said in a podcast about 6 months ago that there are senators, with an S, and congressmen, plural, that are having sex with children overseas. And I asked these people that are in the know, I said, is that a true statement? And they said, yes, but you need to add presidents with an S. And I said, well, are you going to name names? Because I will never sit on it. And they said, no, I'm not going to name names because no one's going to do anything about it yet. We're not going to name names until we have an organization in place to handle these people. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe anything I'm saying. But just ask yourself the question, if I connect all the dots and everything that I am saying and you go home and fact check it, it's true. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Because this has to stop. Do you think the God that I believe in, and I'm not a theologian, my wife's here, she's much better than I am at this. However, I don't believe in the hippie Jesus. I don't believe in the God that he's just going to allow everything to be okay and everything's fine. I believe in the God that sits up there and he's looking down at us, brutalizing his children, both illegal and our own 500 to 1 million children that are in the sex circuit. And he's watching all of us, and we are all complicit because we all have remained silent. Maybe you didn't know before tonight, but you know now. You can try to stick your head in the sand. That doesn't work with God. You're now complicit in this. I come to you today to speak to you about this. I want to take my clothes off, and I want to take a shower. After I'm interviewing these men and women, I feel like I have to go outside and vomit from what I heard. I gave you a sanitized version of how your children are being destroyed in America by our own federal government. This is what is driving everything that you are witnessing today, from the Olympics to the abuse of children in education to the medical field. It's all driven by pedophilia. That is my thesis of my documentary. That is what I'm going to show America, a glimpse of it. I can't show them all of it, but I'm going to show you a glimpse of it. Then we go back to what do we do? I have 5 minutes left, and I want to tell you what you have to do. You have to speak boldly. You cannot sit on the fence anymore. God hates lukewarm people. I can't stand them either. You either fight and get in the battle, or you are going to be the first casualty of war. Trust me. The people on the fence, the people that I don't want to be involved, they get eaten alive first. You have to be bold. You have to listen when people tell you, oh, the pedophilia is attracted people. No, you're a maniac. You need to say that. Men can have babies. No, you're a mental case. Kamala Harris is going to be great. No, let me enumerate all the things she's going to do wrong. Trump is a racist. No, he's not. Let me explain everything he's done. You have to be bold. In order to be bold, you have to be educated. And you have to learn and look at the internet, learn, figure out where you can get the information. And 2, the call to action is you have to get involved. We all want the President Trump. We all want the House and the Senate. But let's all be real. Does anybody believe the electoral system is legitimate? No. But where is it the most legitimate? It's in your city council. It's in your mayor. Who does the mayor appoint? The chief of police. Who is in your school board that determines who your superintendent is? Who is going to be your sheriff is very, very important. And sheriff can talk about this. They are going to be the most important law enforcement entity in the United States of America, bar none. They have the most power. They have the most resources. They have the most connectability because we vote them in. They have the most accountability. They are going to be the organization, the law enforcement apparatus that is going to maybe have to deputize people. I don't want to be in a civil war. I don't want bad things to happen. I want to live in a beautiful, clean, safe nation. But if we're all going to sit here and act as if it's okay, then we're all complicit in the insanity that we find America in. You have to get involved, you have to be bold, and you have to vote in or run for office in order to make a difference. Thank you.
Well, everything I was going to say, I'm not going to say now. I got involved in politics because I wanted to protect children. I don't think that was easy for anybody to hear, but I kind of want to throw up. Thanks. I did ask our sheriff to be here today, not for campaign purposes, but because he is currently our sheriff and he knows exactly what he's seeing and how the open border is affecting us here in Johnson County. And I put this event out and left the comments on, and I cannot tell you, Missy's nodding her head, the number of people who made fun of me because, oh, we're in Kansas, we have a real problem with the border. But it is very much a problem here. If it wasn't a problem here, I wouldn't have put myself through this. But we have to know. So I am going to invite our sheriff up. And JJ Carrell will also answer questions. So I have another mic, so I'll give you guys both the mic. And I'll get myself together here, and I will run back and forth so that we can ask questions. But if you think this isn't happening here, I know it is. I know it is. And that's why he's here tonight. Sheriff, will you come up?
Thanks, Maria. I'm going to read you a list of what's in your jail. And people don't understand it, but it is here. What he's telling you is the God's honest truth.